It was a journey of personal discovery. A love affair with a musical genre that took us to the very beginnings of humankind and our sacred links to water.
Ons 'n klank kom van die Khoisan af, whether we want to accept it or be ignorant about it. Cape Jazz is ons as Cape Town musicians se fingerprints.
It's the cultural music of the Creole person, the so-called colored persons, the remnants of slavery, and indigenous Khoi and San people are also very present in this music.
Cape Town is such a amalgamation of different cultures, being a port city with lots of outside influences, but then again also the indigenous influences from the Khoisan people that were here first.
As you experience the reality of matter to be vibration, you also start experiencing the reality of mind, consciousness, perception, sensation, and reaction. In ancient times, the drum and the Khoi bow were at the heart of sacred rituals, at the heart of raising vibration.
This was the very first guitar on earth. Guitar was copied from this instrument. It never started by the European, this instrument, The San, the Khoisans, and all the other Ngoni tribes, they were the people who first played this instrument.
After 10 years of playing this instrument, I started hearing a voice in my head saying, kauma, 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 all the time. I didn't know what it was. I thought I was going mad. Because every time I would distinctly hear this voice. And then when I did the research, I found out that kauma was a shaman that lived in the 1700s and he also played the mouth bow. They said he could make it rain with his bows and fire came out of his eyes. That was like some of the... So that must have been the voice, that's ancestral voicing. And as freaky as it sounds, it is there. And when you start, not tampering, but when you start playing with vibrations and things that come from ancient cultures, you will find out things along the way.
Our identity was taken away from us by all these forces that came to our country. It's not a Freto Cast or a George Benson Gibson or no. It's the original from here. And you better put it out there for us to really grow and heal from the treacherous past we're coming from.
LOUWSKLOOF MENSE speaks about my hometown where I was born, and the interesting story about it is about 250 years ago, German missionaries settled there and converted some of the local Khoi to Christianity, and LOUWSKLOOF was basically where the Khoi people stayed, just across the road from where Mamre is. Very important for me to know that my people understand that they come from somewhere and they can be proud and they can claim an identity what's rightfully theirs.
If the Khoisan constitute the origins of the Cape Jazz genre, then who are the Khoisan? Our journey of personal discovery took us to many places. Khoatu is a sand culture and education center based on an 850-hectare nature reserve 70 kilometers north of Cape Town.
I'm going to take you guys on a tour today, and this tour is about First People. This is a story how humans become humans in Southern Africa. Humans evolved in Africa around 250,000 years. Their story is very long. Too long for me to remember, and too long for my great-great-great-parents to remember. This story is not just important for me as a San person. It is important for all humans. For you guys, and for me. This is our story. Your ancestors come from Africa. Welcome home. Whose ancestors? Yours. Everybody else and mine. It is our ancestors.
So you will find a lot of food, different food. You will find a big tuber like this one. This is a very important source of food. You will also find underneath the ground a substitute of water as well. So now I filled up my water container, and water is the most essential element of life. So we need water to survive. So simply we have a symbol that is known for our area here. Khoatu means water as well, with the late extinct language of the Kham. So water is everything. Water represents life. We share a water hole, not as human or fellow hunters and gatherers. We also share water with our animals. Lions, elephant, you can name it. So everything is much more about sharing with water.
Blombos Cave in Stilbay on the Cape South Coast is a world-famous archaeological site overlooking the sea. It lays claims to the origins of human culture. Archaeologists have uncovered some of the first evidence of symbolism, cognitive thinking, and technological advancement, traits used to define modern human behavior.
Soos wat die Blombos grot geontgin is en Klaasies rivier en Pinnacle Point, is daar gevind dat die datums is baie ouer as enige ander plek in die wêreld. En dit het redelike debatte veroorsaak en verskille van opinies. En dit vir jare so aangegaan. Tot nou onlangs, baie onlangs, is daar uitgevind deur middel van DNA-studies en allerhande ander navorsing, wat in 2018 onteenseglik bewyse gelewer het dat die Homo sapien hier in die suiderpunt van Afrika oorleef het en hiervanaf versprei het na die res van die wêreld. Nou dis 'n groot keerpunt in die hele benadering. Hierdie kaart is nou verkeerd. Die nuwe kaart wys dat die pile hiervanaf uitgaan na die res van die wêreld. En dit is deel wat ons kan sê, ons almal, is ons erfenis. Dis die hele wêreldse erfenis wat hiervanaf ontstaan het.
While the Blombos Cave is closed to the public, the small Blombos Museum of Archaeology in Stilbay offers visitors the possibility of exploring some of the fascinating findings of this site.
The differences, when in fact, genetically speaking, we can root ourselves right down into the similarity, that shared common heritage from Africa.
Globally, the term First Nation means something very different It's not about ethnicities. It's about when colonials went to Australia and colonials went to the Americas, Canada and the United States, and went to New Zealand. They then took and stole the land of the indigenous people. And the indigenous people of those continents collectively call themselves the first peoples or the first nations of those continents.
Modern evidence suggests that not just the Khoi and San, but all of humankind emerged from the Southern Cape coastline and spread out to populate the entire world.
There's a flat surface on the top of the sediment over here, and the profile that you're looking at here is a...
We asked Dr. Peter Nielsen from the Point of Human Origin in Mossel Bay about the timeline of such human history.
To put our species, to put humanity into perspective, if we put the lifespan of the universe as we understand it now onto a calendar year, starting in January, ending December, then the Big Bang is January, the 1st of January, yes, and that's about 13.7 billion years ago. May of the year sees the formation of our galaxy, the Milky Way. September sees the formation of our solar system and the beginnings of simple life. And then December, the last month in the year, sees a lot of development. But it's at about 6 minutes to midnight on the 31st of December that we arrive, right? And by about 2 minutes to midnight, we migrate out of Africa to populate the rest of the world. And then one of our cousins, Neanderthals, go extinct at about a minute to midnight. So that's the big story of us. And so humans tend to have quite an arrogant way of approaching life and see ourselves as more elevated and more evolved than other species. And I believe that we do have amazing capacities which we have lost as a species.
In the morning mist of a sun arising slowly, like a feeling of old, of old. At the dawning of a future, will she ever be continentable? Giving birth to all of mankind, lasting endlessly, yet no love in return, in return, in return. Once is not enough for a human specimen, always wanting more and more and more and more. Yesterday is gone for us to refrain history, and there will be done, crying in the wind of change is Africa to be, always ready to give one more time, one more time. Yesterday has gone for us to refrain history, and that will be done, be done.
So when we talk about Camissa heritage here, we're really not just talking about Cape Town, because every port city throughout Africa is built around a river, and it has people of multi-ethnic origins.
Unfortunately, with that disruption by the Dutch and their understanding of property rights, the Khoisan understanding of the way their belonging to the Cape and the way that the Cape belongs to them was demolished. This is what's so interesting about coming back to water, not only as a spiritual source of identity formation, but as a way of us thinking of ourselves as custodians as well of the land, rather than just users and exploiters.
Saw some footage of my grandfather playing by soos 'n plaas opstal dance, playing concertina, and the shot immediately after that is die plaasvolk besig met hulle ding op 'n Vrydag aand. And I think that's what's so beautiful. It's all these things. It's actually It's part of our makeup and we don't even know it.
If you want to celebrate your heritage, not your race, Khoisan race or Bantu race, if you want to celebrate your ancestral heritage, celebrate that. Who were these people? What musical instruments did they play? What did they eat? What did they dress? How did they trade? What was their spiritual beliefs? This is what we should be preoccupied with. Not with titles of king and queen and da-da-da-da-da. That's not what we should be preoccupied with. To be wholesome in the 21st century, and to be rooted in your ancestral identity, get to know your ancestors. Get to know who you are in the multiplicity of ways. Look at genealogy, look at social history, archaeology, genetics, all of these things. But none of them on their own tell you who you are. And you are more important than anything else. What you have done in your lifetime with your life.
It's so easy to create something out of Guma music to be a Cape Town jazz, which is also gonna be typically a music that comes from Cape Town. You know, you listen to the same music, you listen to the language that you speak, that makes Cape jazz. That is very authentic, and you will never get Guma or Cape jazz anywhere else in the world except here in Cape Town.
While the Khoisan were the first inhabitants of southern Africa and one of the earliest distinct groups of Homo sapiens, enduring centuries of gradual dispossession at the hands of every new wave of settlers, the new influences would start laying the foundation of a cosmopolitan existence.
That's over 250 years of importation of slaves and enslavement. And on top of that importation would, of course, be genetic reproduction of a slave society between slaves themselves, between slaves and Khoisan. The children of slaves or Khoisan and Europeans were also often then put under a bonded, kind of a coercive labor regime. A new kind of society is starting to be born.
Colonial interest in Cape Town was driven by its strategic location between east and west, access to food, and most importantly, access to Camissa for replenishing of the passing ships. Camissa means place of sweet water, the original name as bestowed on the city of Cape Town by its indigenous inhabitants, the Khoi.
Because the slaves didn't all come from one place, though there was a heavy contribution from the Indonesian archipelago, which gave us Islam here, which was more popular than Christianity amongst the ex-bonded for quite a while. And it gave us the first written versions of Afrikaans, literate imams transcribing the language that people were speaking in the city. It wasn't being written down by the Dutch. They would continue to write in Dutch if they were literate at all. Of course, Christianity coming in as well through the colonizers, and that was widely embraced as well by the colonized and by the enslaved. And so, of course, belief in Christianity and Islam is profound in Cape Town. It's a very important part of the communities here. This society, though, is also replenished. We're talking on a daily basis by hundreds, if not thousands, of sailors. So each year, thousands of sailors would come in through the Dutch East India Company, of course, their ships, but also other ships on the way to and from India and the East Indies. And they needed to reprovision their ships. And oftentimes they made time to enjoy the city, and also, if they could, find recreation of many sorts, including sexual recreation. With so many enslaved people here, some of those women were brought into, you can say, an official sex slavery relationship with the Dutch East India Company. They lived at the Slave Lodge, right here on Adderley Street, which is now a museum. Women who were widowed from the Dutch East India Company, white women, worked in that industry as well to cater to the passing sailors.
And I look at some of my ancestors. I look at Lisbeth Saunders van der Kaap. In today's world, she would be called a slegslet. That woman, in stepping stones from young, very young, to old age, stepped up through relationships. Some of those men abused her. Others of those were love relationships. And some of those relationships were purely transactional relationships. I can't deny this grandmother of mine in history. Today, we still look for their fathers. Do I say that children in my community, who are now adults in my community, are not part of us because their mothers may have been prostitutes and so on? No, you can't. I look at her and her survival strategies, and I must say, I'm born of a people that rose above adversity. Now, there's something really terrible about having to keep secrets. I lead my life like an open book. People say, why you tell people all these things about yourself? I say, why not? It's who I am. It's where I come from. But I know what secrets can do to people. I've seen it in my own family. I've seen it in my community. How secrets actually pull people down. They change their character, their personality. My own mother is one of the saddest people I've ever known in my life. Those women that were here in the first 30 years, 40 years of slavery, check the situation out. And instead of being fearful and living under terror around this, they said, if this is going to happen to us, let's be in charge of it rather. And let's see how we use it to be able to survive.
You had actually a thriving prostitution scene dealing with the foreign sailors. Culture is at the heart of these relationships. These are foreign sailors. These are not local Dutch-speaking people or English-speaking people. Now you've got these women who would never think of it. They're kind of the ultimate, the unsung sirens of globalization. These women are at the cultural forefront of interaction with foreigners. It allows them to feed their families better. So that's what's so interesting, is that the necessity of cultural knowledge creates in dockside prostitutes some of the greatest vanguards of globalization ever.
My diep binne in my wou ek graag my pyn storie, die stories vertel waar uit my pyn kom, van persoonlike pyn stories, soos my pa was nooit daar nie. Ek het hom nie geken nie, en my ma het siek geraak toe ek 5 is, maar ons plattelandse stories is iets wat net my siel raak. Maar my pa was reg, 'n man moet 'n ding doen. En dis nou waar die inspirasie vir ANNETJIE de WAAL vanaf kom. ANNETJIE de WAAL het 'n man gevind. Hy het nooit gerook of gedrink. Nou hoe dan so my kind het haar pa gevra. 'n man is 'n man, ANNETJIE my kind, en 'n ding moet hy doen. He can be a white man, African man.
There's no real boundaries between Cape Jazz because it embraces a lot of things.
So we must be very proud of who we are and the music that we've got in Cape Town, you know.
Camissa is water. Without water, there cannot be life. And this is our essence and our source. It is extremely important to the spirit of humankind, this tangible thing called water. And we identify so much around water because why? Throughout Africa, we see the peopling of any area happens around water. And in Cape Town, the peopling happened around this Camissa River. I'm born of a people who rose above adversity, a people who faced crimes against humanity of all sorts: genocide, ethnocide, colonialism, slavery, de-Africanization, apartheid. It's a hell of a basket of crimes against humanity. I'm born of a people who survived that, who fought that, who faced that. That is heritage and identity more than ethnicity and race.
For the apartheid government, the language of their law said that anyone is a European who is obviously a European. There was no deeper definition offered. Anyone is an Indian who's obviously an Indian. So that means like taken for granted, understood by others to be an Indian. And anyone who is an African is someone who is obviously an African. Now, anyone who is a colored is anyone who is obviously not white, Indian, or African. So it ends up becoming a reservoir kind of category officially. But it does reveal the extent to which just the population by living in this cultural milieu, was always already open. You know, this is not a community that defines itself by keeping other people out. It's a population that understands itself by the contributions of everybody. And the irony is that because of that, every individual within this Creole community has a slightly different genetic history. And it does require doing some historical legwork or some DNA testing to find out what is your particular genetic background that makes up the creolite of the colored community.
If we want our dignity, we need to look beyond this race engineering concept. So when we look back and we say, well, what then do we say? Do we call ourselves Creole? Creole was born out of a basket of race categories that the Spanish and French and Portuguese colonials used. The least insulting of those race terms was Creole, because practically it simply means a new creation. So you find that the term Creole in Louisiana became a way of distinguishing the field slave and the house slave, and the manumitted, lighter-skinned slave became the Creole. So it got to have a meaning other than its original meaning.
This can often be seen as a weakness in terms of identity, when people have such differing backgrounds. Unless you see that diversity as what brings people together, is what makes you common to each other. And I think that is what the strength of the Cape colored population is that it is in its diversity that it is unique. It can make claims on almost any nation because it has ancestry from every nation. That is unique. Nobody else in South Africa can do that. always wants to ensure that while people revel in their creolite, their cosmopolitanness, and their truly organic connectiveness to the rest of the world, that they understand they're rooted in Africa. They're not somewhere else. They're here. And there are so many wonderful connections to be made here too. And so I'm hoping that in some ways that kind of outward facing gaze that so many people in Cape Town have through the maritime connections is also situated more to the land as well, to exploring Africa, to their own connections here. Connecting with one's Khoisan roots is a big first step, but even there, most people also have Xhosa or Sotho contributions as well to their heritage, which is worth exploring. I would never want that to be left aside just because there are other people who can claim it even more so.
History is the story usually written by the elite for the elite. But the archaeological record is completely different because everybody who lived and who happened to throw rubbish away in the past are part of the archaeological record, are part of our story. And so the archaeological record we're talking about today is our story. Because the further we go back in time, the more of our story it becomes. Separatist heritages don't serve us as a species. We know we all have different backgrounds, ethnic background, belief system backgrounds, and so on. But ultimately, we share a much deeper common ancestry.
The term coloured was formalised and further refined in the 50s to the late 1950s. The formalization of the term coloured would find resistance on multiple fronts.
For years it was brown people, Cape people, and then colored people. And then in the 80s, so-called colored people, a rejection of that tightness, right? And then kind of back to colored people in the liberation era. But now it seems like with the younger generation embracing, totally organically taking it in, there's more possibility to experiment and push the boundaries of this identity. So that's more inclusive, that it truly lives up to the ideals that one has for social relations, which is to be inclusive and proud and rooted.
Sangoma is a creolization of Ngoma. Ngoma is a drum. And one of the spiritual faiths across southern and East Africa is the way of the drum. And we know the practitioners as Sangomas. So Guma and Sangoma is related. Around this river, everything, we talk about music. We forget that indigenous peoples all over the world originate from out of Africa. And when we go back to those ancient societies and look at the instruments and the music they play, we see those same instruments among the San and the Khoi today. The indigenous peoples of the world actually, at root, speak to us about what the solution is to our problems today. That we are people. In 1950, they decided to finesse this term colored. And they created 7 categories. So it was Cape Coloured, Malay, Nama, Griqua, other coloured, Indian, and other Asian. In 1958, they took 3 of those away, Indian, Chinese, and other Asian, and they created a category called Asian. So 4 categories of coloured remained: Cape Coloured, Malay, Griqua, and other coloured. All of this speaks of social engineering. Griqua is a real category, but the others were all socially engineered categories.
In 1960, the University of the Western Cape was established as a coloured tertiary education institution. The university would become the ground zero of resistance to the imposition of the term coloured.
The first generation of students who came to UWC, there was always an ambivalence about that place for us. We knew that we wanted some learning, but apartheid told us there's only one place where you could go. And if you're not willing to go there as a coloured, you'd better stay away. So to go there with that consciousness in the back of your mind, and with another consciousness saying very clearly to yourself, I will never accept this, and I will turn this around for myself and for others. That's where it began. Now that we have turned the university into the home of the revolution, what would be its role? Well, I think the first thing is to think about the fact that the truth about South Africa, the most painful truth about our country right now, is that in 1994, when we thought the struggle was over, it was only the beginning of a new struggle. These people who have been dubbed, classified, coloured by apartheid, now all of a sudden, 25 years into our democracy, find ourselves again classified coloured, but not by an apartheid regime. This is now a tag that is put on us by the liberation movement, at whose side we stood for fighting for our people. I mean, in the Black Consciousness movement, all these categories, all these labels were taken away. We took them and threw them into the heart of the sea. They reintroduced this colored tag, and they made us feel again as if we did not belong. I call that the confusion of the illusion of inclusion. Who do you think you are to say that to me? Who do you think you are to say that these people, the hotbed of militarism, of militant activism in the 1980s and so forth, were not in the struggle, as if we did not march, as if we did go to prison, as if we were not tortured, as if we were not killed by the hundreds, 149 people in the Western Cape alone between July and December of 1976. We must resist every effort to push us back into that old apartheid mindset. And the younger generation must make the connections between what happened then and what happened now. If that sacrificial selflessness that was at the heart of that generation was real, and I saw it, it was real, then it is every bit as real in our young people now. And how I would love to see that flame rekindled, and that struggle embraced, and that determination made their own, and that courage bloom again, to make this country what it must be and still not is.
We resolved that we are in need of a change of heart, that there is no need of identity beyond humankind in its purest form. We resolved we need to confront our inner resistances and cast a grateful look on creation, letting our heart be touched by its wounded reality and making a strong personal and communal commitment to healing it. Camissa the Source is a pilot project. Future installments will include a deep dive into the various elements that has made Cape Town the cosmopolitan metropolis that it is.